Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, I want you to stay with me for a few minutes, because what we're about to talk about is something most English learners experience, but almost no one explains properly. Let me start with a situation you know very well. When someone looks at you and everything falls apart, you're alone. Maybe you're thinking in English. Maybe you're practicing in your head. Maybe you're even speaking to yourself. And at that moment, your English feels normal. Not perfect, but clear enough. You can find words. You can complete sentences. You don't feel stuck. Then someone enters the picture. It could be a colleague, a stranger, a teacher, or even a friend. They don't say anything yet. They just look at you, and suddenly something shifts inside you. Your breathing changes. Your thoughts stop flowing the way they were flowing just a second ago. And now, when you try to speak, the words that were easily available a moment ago feel distant, blurred, unreachable. You open your mouth, but your mind feels empty. And in that silence, a familiar thought appears. Why is this happening again? I know English. I've studied for years. So why do I sound like this now? This moment hurts more than people realize. Because it's not just about English. It feels personal. It feels like something is wrong with you. But here is the truth that changes everything. And I want you to really absorb this. Your English is not disappearing in front of people. Your brain is reacting to being observed. When you're alone, your brain is relaxed. It's focused on meaning. It's not in a hurry to judge itself. It's simply trying to express a thought. But the moment someone looks at you, your brain stops being a communicator and starts becoming a performer. And performers don't think freely. They monitor themselves constantly. Without realizing it, your attention shifts away from your message and moves toward yourself. How do I sound right now? Is my grammar correct? Am I speaking too slowly? What if they notice my accent? What if I make a mistake and they judge me? These thoughts don't come loudly. They come silently, automatically, and once they appear, your brain is no longer calm. It goes into protection mode, and in protection mode, speed is reduced, risk is avoided, and speaking freely becomes impossible. This is why your sentences break midway. This is why you pause too long. This is why even simple words don't come on time. Not because you forgot English, but because your brain doesn't feel safe using it. You see, fluency needs freedom, and freedom disappears the moment you start watching yourself too closely. The more you try to control every word, the less natural your speech becomes. And the sad part is, the more intelligent and self-aware you are, the more likely this is to happen to you. Because your mind is trained to analyze, to evaluate, to avoid mistakes. And that skill, which helps you in studies and life, becomes the exact reason your English collapses in social moments. If this feels painfully accurate, I want you to know something right now. Nothing is broken inside you. You are not behind. And you don't need to start from zero. What you're experiencing is a mental switch. And once you understand how it works, you can learn to turn it off. Why practice never fixed this? Up to this point, you probably did what everyone does. When English failed you in front of people, you assumed the problem was skill. So, you practiced more. You learned new words. You revised grammar rules. You watched videos. You repeated sentences. You told yourself, if I prepare enough, this won't happen again. But it still happened. And that confusion slowly turned into frustration. Because deep inside, you knew something didn't add up. If lack of practice was the problem, then why did your English work perfectly when no one was watching? That question is the key. The real issue was never practice. It was the moment of pressure. When you speak alone, there is no consequence, no judgment, no audience. Your brain doesn't feel threatened, so it lets thoughts move freely into words. But the moment someone listens, your brain senses evaluation. And here's something no one tells you. The brain does not care whether the danger is real or imagined. Being judged socially activates the same system that reacts to physical threat. Your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes shallow, and the part of your brain responsible for smooth language is no longer in control. So every time you tried to practice more, you were strengthening English in a safe environment and expecting it to perform in an unsafe one. That mismatch is why nothing changed. You weren't training speaking. You were training thinking about speaking. And thinking too much is the enemy of flow. This is also why advice like, just be confident, never helped you. Confidence doesn't appear before speaking. Confidence appears after your brain feels safe while speaking. And safety doesn't come from perfection. It comes from permission. Permission to pause. Permission to sound imperfect. Permission to finish a sentence badly and still continue. But most English learners never give themselves that permission. They enter every conversation trying to sound correct, trying to sound smart, trying to avoid mistakes at all costs. And the more they try to avoid mistakes, the more their brain locks up. This is why people who make mistakes freely often sound more fluent than people who know more English. Not because they are better, but because they are less afraid. If you're listening carefully, you'll realize something important here. You don't need more English knowledge. You need a different relationship with speaking. One where speaking is not a test. One where your value is not tied to accuracy. One where your brain doesn't feel like it's on stage every time you open your mouth. The moment you stop performing and start speaking. Up till now, we've talked about what goes wrong. Now let's talk about what actually changes it. Because the solution is not confidence, and it's definitely not more practice. The solution is what you do in the exact moment. Someone looks at you and expects you to speak. That moment is critical. Right now, when that moment comes, your attention moves inward. You start listening to yourself. You start checking your words. You start judging your sentence before it's even finished. And the more you monitor yourself, the more disconnected you become from the person in front of you. So the first shift is simple, but powerful. You stop speaking to be correct, and you start speaking to be understood. This is not just a mindset idea. It changes where your brain puts its energy. When your goal is correctness, your brain stays inside your head. But when your goal is understanding, your attention moves outward, towards the person, towards the message, towards the meaning. And meaning is where fluency lives. Here's something you can try, even in your next conversation. The moment you feel pressure, don't ask yourself, how am I speaking? Ask yourself, what am I responding to? That question pulls you out of performance mode and back into communication mode. Another shift happens when you slow your intent, not your speech. Most people try to speak slowly to sound clear. But slowing your speech without changing your intent just gives your brain more time to panic. Instead, slow the purpose of your sentence. You don't need to finish perfectly. You just need to move the idea forward. Even if the sentence is incomplete. Even if the grammar is wrong. Even if you need to restart. Fluent speakers don't speak in perfect lines. They adjust while speaking. And once you allow yourself to adjust, your brain stops freezing. This is also why short, imperfect sentences often unlock longer, better ones. Because they tell your brain, it's safe to continue. You're not being evaluated. You're being listened to. And that difference matters more than vocabulary ever will. If you're wondering why this feels hard at first, it's because you've trained yourself for years to treat English like an exam. Exams demand accuracy. Conversations demand connection. And the moment you prioritize connection, your brain relaxes just enough to let words come out. How this finally starts to feel natural. By now, you should see something clearly. Your problem was never English. It was never vocabulary. It was never grammar. It was the way you were entering conversations. Every time you spoke, you were stepping into the moment already tense, already alert, already trying to prove something, and no language works well under proof. So the real practice begins here. Not in front of a mirror, not with word lists, not with perfect sentences, but in small, real moments, where you allow yourself to speak before you feel ready. At first, this will feel uncomfortable. Your sentences may be simple, sometimes messy, sometimes incomplete, and that's exactly why it works. Because every time you finish a thought, even imperfectly, your brain receives a signal. It's safe, and safety creates flow. You don't wait for confidence to appear. Confidence grows after your brain experiences that nothing bad happened. This is why the goal is not to impress. The goal is to continue. Continue the sentence. Continue the idea. Continue the interaction. When you do this repeatedly, something subtle begins to change. You stop rehearsing in your head. You stop predicting mistakes. You stop listening to yourself speak. And slowly, your attention stays where it belongs, with the person in front of you. That's when English starts feeling less like a task and more like a response. One day, you'll notice something small but powerful. Someone will look at you. They'll wait for you to speak. And this time, your mind won't freeze. Not because you suddenly became fluent, but because you no longer panic at the moment of attention. That's real progress. If this video made you feel understood, if it finally explained something you couldn't put into words, then you're in the right place. This channel isn't about sounding perfect. It's about feeling free while speaking. If you want more videos like this, videos that fix the mental blocks, not just the language, then stay connected. Subscribe to the channel. Watch the next video. Share this with someone who struggles silently. And remind yourself of this one thing. Your English never disappears. You just forget, for a moment, that you're allowed to speak imperfectly. And once you remember that, everything changes. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.